Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another ASUS PC DIY hardware live stream. It's JJ here with ASUS, and we're really excited to go ahead and actually talk about, I think, a really exciting technology with the latest generation PCIe Gen 5 specification. So as you guys know, ASUS has a huge number of partners that we work with, and one of our favorite partners is actually Micron and Crucial. And we're really excited to actually host another live stream, which if you guys haven't checked out our prior live stream on all things DDR5, make sure to go ahead and check that out. That's here on our ASUS North American YouTube channel, and it gives you a lot of great information regarding DDR5. But in this stream, we're going to be talking about the latest and greatest when it comes to PCIe storage. And of course, items like this guy right here next to me, this brand new T700 PCIe NVMe Gen 5 M.2 base SSD. We're also going to be talking about some really cool brand new updates in terms of DDR5 and DDR4 Pro memory that's going to be new from Crucial. Some really cool memory for those of you looking for a truly performant, stable, and reliable experience when it comes to upgrading your system or building a brand new system. We've also got another cool update for those of you that are actually on the console side of the fence and looking for some high-speed storage. So let me go ahead and actually invite our two guests that we have joining us with us. So let's go ahead and meet our friends over from Crucial, and let's see who we have joining us. We've got, I believe, Matt joining us from the Crucial team, and we've also got Harshit joining us from the Crucial team. Thank you guys so much for joining us here on the stream. Why don't you go ahead and introduce your guys?
Thank you so much, JJ, for having us. I'm Harshit. I'm very excited to be on the channel and talk to the users about Crucial. So I'm the product marketing manager at Crucial, taking care of internal SSDs and making sure we market exciting products, successfully.
Awesome. Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Matt Woith. I am here also with the Crucial team, working very closely with Harshit. My responsibility here at Crucial is product line management. Essentially what that means is working with all the great teams and getting all the great feedback from customers and defining all the awesome products that we're releasing to market and working with Harshit. So really excited. Thank you.
Fantastic. So thanks so much, guys, for introducing yourselves. And thank you guys for all of you that are currently joining us today on the stream. Let's see quickly just who we have joining us on the stream. Say a little bit of hello to some of those that are joining us here. So we've got, let's see, we've got Riyadh joining us. Happy to have you here. Let's see. We've got somebody that's pretty hyped here for PCIe Gen 5 M.2 base SSDs. We've got one of our, of course, really passionate PC DIY community members, Sue Min, who I know is going to definitely be interested in these drives. We also, I believe, have... So I say Erica is joining us also on the stream, letting us know that our audio is checked out well as well. And we've got Anas as well, also giving us a little bit of a hello. So fantastic. So for everybody joining us on the stream, feel free to go ahead and drop your questions or comments in the chat. I think that we've got a pretty good stack, though, in terms of actually covering a lot of the points that you're probably going to be interested in. We're going to be talking about the ins and outs, helping you kind of come up to speed in terms of if you're not familiar about kind of the specifications, the speeds and feeds, interoperability and compatibility, different upgrade characteristics you're going to have to keep in mind when it comes to the platform. We're also, like I said, going to be touching on some other cool new products in this stream as well, to kind of solidify some of the really cool performance-oriented products that Crucial is going to be offering to the PC DIY community, not only with these latest generation T700 series M.2 SSDs, but also these brand new DDR Pro series modules, both in DDR4 and DDR5. And then also, like I noted, we've got a very cool introduction for those of you on the console side of the fence a little bit later on in the stream. So I think first up, though, for those that are going to be joining us that maybe might not necessarily be aware of who Crucial is, why don't you guys give us just a little bit of kind of breakdown in terms of who Crucial is, in terms of kind of an industry an industry really kind of innovator and of course supporter of so many technologies. I mean, it's probably surprising to I think a lot of people that you would find somebody that is not aware of who you guys are, but why don't you go ahead and give us a little bit of a breakdown in terms of who you guys are.
Sure, JJ. So Crucial is Micron's global consumer brand, which offers wide range of memory and storage products, from leading e-tailers out there to resellers, commercial resellers, and system integrators. So Crucial has, talking about the storage today, Crucial has a lot of exciting products that have launched recently and is one of the leading storage leader out there. So very excited to show, what Crucial is bringing to this channel and for the folks over here. So with
Yeah,
that,
absolutely. And if I may add one thing too, as our parent friend company, Micron, very big manufacturer when it comes to the underlying component, which is the NAND flash that goes on all these great SSDs that we develop. So we'll talk a little bit about that when we get to the SSDs as well.
Fantastic, fantastic. Yeah, and I think for those of you guys, essentially, I think that are not aware, we talked a little bit about this, of course, also in that great DDR5 live stream that we also did with Crucial. So if you guys want to find out a little bit more, feel free to go ahead and check that out. But I think really you guys are lightly really talking about a large kind of history and portfolio you have in terms of innovation, and it really kind of leading kind of progress, especially when we talk about storage and we talk about kind of NAND and we talk about a lot of kind of underlying what is going into so many of our products. Whether we're talking about, of course, memory solutions that are utilized in graphics, whether they're utilized in mobile solutions, whether we're talking about things like M.2 or traditional SATA-based SSDs. Really, there's so many kind of touchstones where you guys are present and have been present for a long time. So it's very exciting to be able to kind of team up together and be able to talk about this brand new exciting specification. So I think getting ready to kick things off here, I think we have a little bit of a cool video that we wanted to kind of show off here to kind of kick off this little bit of the conversation here before we get into our storage primer. So in this kind of storage primer, we're going to hopefully give you guys a little bit more foundation of understanding where we've been, where we're at, and kind of where we're going when it comes to kind of the latest generation PCI specification for storage, and helping you hopefully have a little bit more understanding before we get into some of the really exciting stuff of talking about, really breaking that 10 gigabytes in terms of a second performance, which is, it's been a long time coming, and it's really exciting. And I think aligning with things like direct storage, Windows 11, new game development engines, and a lot of really cool stuff like that, it's just making me super excited to be able to experience this type of performance in a system now. But with that, let me go ahead and bring up this video here. For those of you guys that are checking it out, I'm also going to go ahead and link this in the chat. So if you guys want to go ahead and check this out, you guys can. It's a cool little video that the Crucial team went ahead and recently, I think they just put it out a couple of weeks ago to kind of align with the latest release of their DDR Pro series memory, as well as the T700, and kind of just giving you that little bit of that perspective that, all of us as gamers, we kind of know sometimes what happens is we get into the game and sometimes maybe the performance isn't exactly where we'd like it to be, right? And what do you end up doing? You kind of start asking yourself, well, what can I upgrade, right? What can I change on my system, right? Although it's done in, I'd say, just a little bit more of a playful way, right? Let's go ahead and check this out here. So it's pretty interesting. So for those of you guys, we're streaming this over so you guys can check out the video. So there's no audio playback. So I strongly recommend make sure to go ahead and check it out. You get the real dynamic immersion kind of experience, but it's pretty cool. Just wondering, for Matt or Harshit, or either one of you guys, what was the first impressions you saw when you actually checked this out for the first time?
Oh man, I remember the first time they actually had a little showing in the auditorium over here at our office, and just them putting it up on the screen, it just blew our minds. Just the amount of detail and time that went into this. I think, Harshit, keep me honest, they were telling me they filmed at a location, some remote location. They had to get all sorts of permits for the explosions and whatnot. It was crazy.
Definitely, it was very exciting, and having some real characters actually enacting, that's that about talking about the product, that's something unique. And definitely, JJ, as you told, this is some of the real challenge that gamers see.
And there you go. That's one of the challenges, right? The stuttering, the loading, right? The latency experience, right?
Absolutely.
Why don't you guys let us know in the chat, right? When was the last time you experienced one of kind of those hiccups in your system? Whether it was you running out of space, maybe the game's taking a little bit too long, maybe you just got that new 30 gigabyte patch and it's just taking a little bit longer to download and install than you'd like it to be, or maybe you just don't have enough memory to be able to go ahead and run your Discord, right, your stream and your game all at the same time, right? I think all of us kind of know those pain points. But like I said, it's just a little bit of fun here, right, to kind of show that, of course, with some cool upgrades, whether they're from the Crucial side of the fence or whether they're from the ASUS side of the fence, ultimately you can have a smoother, more performant, and a better gaming experience, right? And I think that's what ultimately you guys are trying to talk about here. So cool video, and we're going to definitely be touching on that. And also, we do want to kick off and let you guys know we are going to be doing a giveaway. So if you guys are checking us out right now, for those that are essentially watching the stream, you're going to want to make sure to go ahead and use the corresponding hashtag level up with Crucial. All right, level up with Crucial, and you will be actually in for the drawing. I believe there's two giveaways. One is going to be, I believe, a 4 terabyte T700. That's pretty crazy. That is the largest PCI Gen 5 M.2 SSD on the market. All right. I think any user would be absolutely super excited to get that installed in their system. And for those of you that don't have a PCI Express Gen 5 enabled system, we will be talking about this, but it is backwards compatible. So as long as you got a PCIe NVMe M.2 SSD slot on your motherboard, you should be good to go. So no worries on that side. And then there's a secondary SSD that we're going to talk about a little bit later, but I'm going to let you know we're going to be giving another one away. So again, that's level up with Crucial. So with that, guys, what do you say we kick it off and go into a little bit of our storage primer?
Sure.
Let's do it.
All right. So I think first up is why don't we just go ahead and talk a little bit about kind of what is an SSD, and right, how does it differ from an HDD? I think SSDs are definitely nothing new, right? We've had them now for a very long period of time, right? Starting off with SATA, right, and then we evolved into the first gen PCI Express, right, where there wasn't even PCI Express NVMe, right? Where now everything is PCIe NVMe, but there was that period where it was just PCI Express, no NVMe, and then we transitioned again, right? But really that change from going from, of course, a mechanical platter design to, of course, solid state and NAND. So would you give us a little bit of insight? What's fundamentally the difference, right? What are maybe the three touchstones that you really think are important to kind of understand when we're talking about this transition?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you guys may be aware, hard drives traditionally store data via a very spinning platter, right? A head goes around this platter and reads data off these various magnetic, let's call them pits in that platter itself. Whereas in NAND flash, we don't have any moving parts. Nothing spinning. Nothing's moving. It's all stored with electrons in various gates in the technology itself. So that's a very unique aspect of NAND flash that allows us to get performance without having to spin around a piece of metal. So really, really cool technology.
Yeah, and I think kind of the big kind of analogy is when we first started entering into SSDs, right, was that excitement that we were kind of starting to get into that closer kind of intermediate space of it's not as fast as system memory, right? But we're getting to that point where we're getting much more of that performant kind of immediate access, right? Where that hard drive, fundamentally, you're dealing with something that's mechanical, right? So there's that actuation, there's that process that, hey, I've got to seek that information here, right?
Absolutely.
But now with, of course, having that solid state technology, it's just that much quicker at really being able to kind of get to your information, right? And of course, like anything, just like in system memory, right, where we've gone from DDR1 to DDR2 to DDR3, NAND technology, controller technology, so many different things have improved to allow us to get faster and faster and faster, right? So, we started off with, of course, it's the SATA interface, and it's still actually a great solid option. I still like it because sometimes you don't steal any PCI Express lanes, and we'll talk about that maybe in a little bit. But that's topping out, right, of course, at your 600 megabytes, right, theoretical limit, right? You got to count for overhead and whatnot, right, and everything like that. But now we're talking gigabytes, right? That's really exciting, right? Gigabytes of performance. So kind of going from that perspective, moving on from there, why don't we talk about what are the key components within an SSD?
Yeah, absolutely. So SSD is made up of various different components that bring it to life, right? One of the most important pieces, obviously, is a component that we make here at Micron, which is the NAND flash itself. That is the underlying technology where all your bits and bytes of all those cat memes and all those videos you guys are watching get stored. So ultimately, it gets translated down at that level. But other components of SSD also that are relevant are the controller itself, what kind of memory it has or doesn't have memory in certain use cases, and the form factor. Traditionally, most of the SSDs we see at the desktop level are what's called M.2 2280. So that is the form factor of the device itself.
Yeah, and I
So
think that's an important thing to know, right? Because a lot of when you talk about kind of NAND and even capacities, right? The form factors determine some of these factors, right? Well, not some of these; they definitely define them, right? Like for me, I'm actually a big fan of kind of the U.2 and U.3 because from a thermal perspective and from a density perspective, it's actually a little bit more forgiving, right, than M.2, which originally was kind of intended more so for the mobile side of the fence and kind of really transitioned to also be strongly adopted in the desktop side of the fence, right? But it's been really impressive to be able to still see M.2, even though, right, we're talking about such a compact based drive, still be able to reach now the performance levels of what we're seeing, right? Especially what we're going to be seeing here with this T700 here. So moving from those core components, right? Why don't you kind of give us maybe some perspective here, right? Is that where are we now, right, when it comes to PCI Express storage, right? So I think we're kind of transitioning, right? We're kind of PCI Express Gen 3, it's pretty prevalent, right? But PCI Express Gen 4 has been out for a bit, and now we're getting ready to jump into a brand new one, right? And interestingly enough, this is all happening right like in the era of 5, right? We're going to PCI Express Gen 5 while DDR5 is really starting to mature and hit its stride as well, right?
absolutely right. And as you kind of touched earlier, how I see this into three eras. Like early 2000s, we had HDD, then we moved to SATA, 3 to 4x faster than what we had with hard disk. Now it's, as you said, PCIe NVMe time, where we are seeing actually the market move and people upgrading and choosing an option of NVMe versus a SATA, given that it's higher speeds. An entry level Gen 3 that we talk about is around 3,500 megabytes per second read, which is nearly about 7 times faster than a SATA drive. And the good part, exciting part, is that we have different generations, JJ, as you touched, in PCIe NVMe storage, where Gen 3 3,500 reads going to Gen 4, as you said. There are different swim lanes in Gen 4, and entry level Gen 4 is around 5,000 megabytes per second that we have right now, P3 plus. Performance, we have P5 plus around 66. So people are kind of buying into that gaming space, the higher end of Gen 4. And then, yes, Gen 5, which we'll be talking about more, which has almost twice as speed of Gen 4. So yes, we are seeing the market now, people switching over to more Gen 4 than Gen 3. So we are
Yeah.
seeing that transition. And definitely with Intel 13 Gen and AMD Ryzen 7000, which was launched last year, with that PCIe 5 M.2 slot, we are seeing now people, those early adopters, enthusiasts, gamers who want best of the best products to switch over to Gen 5.
Yeah, and it's complementary also, right? I think the other thing too that we're seeing is that capacity, right, has been an important part, right, for a period of time, right? I mean, of course, hard drives still lead, right, in terms of we're just talking about pure density, right? So they still do have kind of their place there at helping to supplement our kind of storage experience. But there was definitely a period of time, right, where with M.2 you were limited. It's like 250 gigabyte, 500 gigabyte, and then it was rare to even find that 1 gig, right? But like we just talked about, now with this T700 introduction, you're not only offering that now, that really kind of quintessential and kind of that, it's really kind of it's the entry really for the enthusiast, that 1 gigabyte marker, right? And then 2 gigabyte is that step up, and then 4 gigabyte is now where you're starting to get into kind of when those users that really kind of I want tons of space. But that's also in alignment with the reality of what we're doing from applications, high resolution video, high resolution photos, right? And of course games, which now you can literally be talking about 70 to 100 plus gigabytes for certain game installations, right? So it's kind of also come in alignment, right, where we're seeing that not only the speed but the densities are of course increasing, and that's also and aligned, of course, also with the evolution that you guys have on the NAND side, which helps to facilitate, of course, more stacking so that we can get more performance, more density, right? So I think helping to round out one of the last points of the year, this primer, as we get ready to talk about, of course, this really exciting new drive with the T700, I want to go ahead and touch on one last part, which is going to be talking a little bit about durability and reliability, right? Sometimes some users sometimes aren't necessarily as knowledgeable when it comes to some of these terms, like the, excuse me, TBW, right? And kind of what that means, or kind of interpreting the way that, let's say, a solid state drive, let's say, works over time in comparison to, let's say, a mechanical volume. So can you give us a little bit of insight in terms of understanding some of those elements and some of those terms?
Yeah, absolutely, JJ. So when you see the terms DWPD and TBW, you're like, what in the world does any of this mean? Well, I can tell you, DWPD essentially stands for drive writes per day, and TBW is terabytes written. And what does this all mean for us as somebody who uses this device? Well, that essentially like tells you the capability of how much data you can write to your SSD. And if you are unaware, right, SSD, the underlying technology, that NAND flash, it does have a limited what's called program erase cycles, right? Those cycles are limited. However, all of the great firmware, all of the great technology, all of the great testing and validation we do here at Micron and Crucial is designed to ensure that you have a device that's going to last you through all of its paces, right? And really what we see for, general use case is the amount of data that you write on a daily basis. I think that the data point we have is somewhere around 60 gigabytes you may potentially write in a day, which is a very small number in the grand scheme of things. And if you think about it, you may not even write that much, right? When you boot up your PC, you're doing a lot of reads, right? You're reading that OS data back, right? You go to open your last YouTube video, right? You're reading a lot of data. So a lot of the use cases actually reads. When you go to save your file, right? You're not saving that 60 gigabyte Word document, right? You're saving a really small amount of data.
Yep.
And it's what we call kind of bursty type workloads. It's not like you're writing 24/7, right? You're not writing all the time. You're doing little bits at various times. So that's kind of where our architecture comes into play to give you that really insane performance for those little bursts of writes that you're doing throughout the day.
Yeah, and of course, we'll talk about this a little later. You of course can see really good information within your guys' storage utility, which helps you kind of understand the health of your drive over time, and you can get a sense of those things. But I think the important thing is that people can feel confident that as they make an investment into these drives, whether you're talking about something like a P3, a P5, a T700, right, that you're not going to have to be worried like, hey, if I'm gaming, right, every single day for 4 or 5 hours, right, in 2 years, do I have to replace my drive? 3 years? No, it's not a question mark, right? If anything, over really the last few years, we've continued to see continued improvements across the board in terms of the technology, the validation, the firmware, the algorithms that are going into place to really be able to give you a reliable, robust, and durable product, right? So again, even though we are talking about a brand new, really kind of cutting edge product, right, with this new T700 that we're going to touch on here. It's really kind of been based on really more than a decade, right, of proven validation and work that's kind of gone into having you be very confident. So you guys don't have to worry about that. But I wanted to go ahead and just talk about this a little bit because sometimes there is some conversation and there's some good questions that are popping up here. Rest assured, we are going to be talking about, I see some people asking about thermals, and definitely thermals are a factor when you're talking about the high performance drives that we're talking about, not only in the PCI Express Gen 4 era where it started to come up a little bit because you were starting to get into higher wattages, right? With these new drives, you are, of course, getting into a little bit even of a higher power bracket, and you are pushing the envelope where thermals are going to be something that do need to be accounted for. But the Crucial team has done a fantastic job with really doing a really nice integrated heatsink solution that's going to be performant, and we're going to touch on that. And then again, of course, on our side, don't worry, if you got an ASUS ROG board, the heatsinks on there, I can tell you that they're built to a very high spec standard. And you're going to be good to go. So we will definitely be talking about that. So rest assured, if you guys got questions, feel free to go ahead and drop those in the chat. So I think with that, let's get ready and let's talk about the T700. What do you think, guys? Sounds good?
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and pop mine off of the board right here before I just show this beautiful image right here. But of course, it's right there. This is the heatsink version. You guys actually will have two different versions, and I'll show the images right here. But for something so small, it's deceptively performant, right? That you wouldn't necessarily kind of almost believe that with this, you're breaking that 10 gigabyte barrier, right? And actually quite a bit more than that, right? In terms of peak performance, right? We're talking, about 12,400, and then about what 11,600 on out there, around there, right? On the performance side. Really, really impressive. But let's go ahead and let me bring up the images right here for this drive. And we'll first show the non-heatsink based version, and then we'll go ahead and we'll take a look at the heatsink version. And why don't you guys go ahead and give us some of these data points on this new drive here. So, Harjeet, why don't you go ahead and maybe kick us off? Give us some of the kind of the high level information here on terms of what are some of the key benefits here that we're going to be having as we move into looking at these Gen 5 based SSDs.
Absolutely right. So we are very excited to launch. We are the Crucial's world's first tier 1 brand to launch a Gen 5 SSD. So what you're seeing in front of you is the non-heatsink option. And we launched this product to give a customer in flexibility, because all the high-end motherboards right now are actually coming up with pre-installed motherboard heatsink. So, for a customer flexibility standpoint, we offered this type of SKU so that a user can buy this and install in their current motherboard heatsink. The next SKU that you see over here is the T700 integrated heatsink option, and we'll talk about heatsink more in depth in the coming slides. But very excited about this product. So this is an integrated heatsink, end-to-end tested product, and the Gen 5, thermals are definitely something that's real. So it has been sleekly designed, which we'll be talking about more. But let us know what you think about cool-looking heatsink, and if you have any first thoughts.
Yeah, I think the ID design looks fantastic, right? I think that one of the things I really loved, I remember talking to you guys when you guys introduced the first DDR5 modules, and you would kind of just went this really clean black design aesthetic. I was like, you guys need to do more of that, right? Because it just helps to keep this really clean, nice, polished design aesthetic. It's really complementary not only for the base of gamers, where so many of the components that we have are, of course, monochrome and they're black and it just goes together. But of course, it's very friendly for some of our other users, whether they're on the creation, the productivity, the science and simulation side of the fence, right? It's this kind of I wouldn't say it's a mundane aesthetic, because I think it looks really refined, really clean, well done, right? But it's very much complementary across different types of user bases. But of course, the big thing right here, right, is that Gen 5 specification, and like you said, tier 1. And why don't you go ahead and give us a little bit more information? I think we talked a little bit about this before, right, with the introduction of that 232 NAND technology, right, from Micron. That's what's really helping to afford kind of this next level of performance, right, that we're seeing on here, right? And when we're talking about these speeds, it's really a significant uplift from what we're seeing from the fastest PCI Express Gen 4 based drives, right?
Absolutely right. So what you're seeing in front of you is best-in-class product design and feature. And as JJ touched, the main feature over here is the NAND, right? So Micron introduced 232-layer NAND, and without this NAND, the world actually would never have seen the Gen 5 NVMe performance of 10 gigabytes per second, 12.4 gigabytes per second. So this is something Micron has been working with its partners such as Phison for a long time to bring this Gen 5 technology innovation to the market, not only for Crucial, but also other Gen 5 SSDs that you see right now have Micron 232-layer NAND. So definitely, that is one of the key recipe for Gen 5 speeds.
Yeah, and for those of you not aware, when he's talking about Phison, that's the actual controller that's inside there. So kind of think a little bit of kind of like almost like the CPU inside, like on your motherboard, right? There's somewhat like a CPU. There's a controller that's built inside of that actual storage device that works with certain channels and the NAND to ultimately offer the performance, right? And an important part here too is that you can see different manufacturers essentially implement different types of NAND that can have different speeds. There can also be memory. I believe for this drive, it's it's 1 gigabyte per is it what? Yeah, it's a 1 gigabyte per 1 gig of the storage, correct?
You're referring to the memory capacity?
Yeah, correct.
Yes, yeah, 1 GB to 1 TB. Yes,
One
correct.
terabyte, yeah, excuse me, one
Yes,
terabyte, right.
yes.
So essentially, you could have up to 4 GB worth of memory on the 4 TB model, right? And then, on the 2 TB, you would
Yes.
have 2 GB worth of memory. And those are sometimes some of those you might be wondering about what that relates to. So that's ultimately just like when you hear about drives that essentially have maybe no onboard memory, right? That more heavily leveraged system memory, which it's actually not as bad as it used to be because, of course, now with faster memory specifications, you can actually have pretty performant quote unquote DRAM list based SSD solutions. But here you of course get very premium high speed DDR memory that's on board here. And like I said, it scales of course with the density, right? So the higher the density of the drive, essentially the more memory that'll be there. But of course that just that works along with the algorithm in terms of how everything has to get balanced out. So overall capacities, I believe we also touched on this, where again, for those of you wondering about in terms of what you can get it in, you can get it in 1 TB, 2 TB, and 4 TB. And as of right now, it's the only 4 TB solution on the market if you want that PCI Express Gen 5 love. So that's definitely, I think, a sweet one. And again, I've been seeing people dropping it in the chat there. So make sure to continue to use that hashtag if you want to get in on the giveaway that we're going to be having here on the stream, right? But very exciting to be able to, I think, at launch, because sometimes you usually see the higher densities sometimes come out a bit later on, but it's pretty exciting that literally right at the launch of the drive, you guys are offering all three of these capacities.
Absolutely right. And I would love to share what I have with these users more on Crucial T700 JJ.
Okay.
So let me take the screen grab. Really quick.
So I think next up here, we want to go ahead and maybe touch a little bit as we kind of going into kind of the conversation with PCI Express Gen 5. I think one of the big kind of touchstones, right, when we talk about PCI Express Gen 5 is going to be its alignment with direct storage, right? Microsoft talked about this quite a bit when they were kind of getting ready to push out Windows 11, right? Where there was a lot of new exciting things that were being baked into Windows 11, and one of them was going to be that support, right, for direct storage. And this is something I think has been a long time coming. The reality is that when we talk about the way that kind of the pipeline works, the architecture works in terms of how the graphics card works with storage and then also works with system memory, it's really kind of one of these areas that has kind of been almost overlooked, and it's been very much limited in terms of overall the bandwidth that's been afforded to it. And this is kind of really helping to bring up to speed and allow essentially all the modern hardware to really kind of be able to benefit from ultra high speed storage, high speed based memory, right? And ultimately provide us just better experiences, right? Whether it's going to be faster loading, right? More dynamic realism, right? Because we're going to be able to render in higher resolution assets, right? It's just really exciting. So why don't you guys talk to us a little bit about that? And also, if you could help to clarify, I believe there is some firmware elements, right, that are required for direct storage support. And your guys' drive is certified for direct storage, correct?
Absolutely right. And Matt will jump into those details, but we are very excited about this product in terms of definitely that real world benefits. And one big piece of it is direct storage. It is definitely a new technology that is coming up, and direct storage coupled with the bandwidth of what this drive gives, which is 12,400 megabytes per second, coupled with those two elements, end of the day gives that real world benefit with direct storage that we are really excited about. So Matt, you want to deep dive into the product's
Yeah.
direct storage capabilities?
Yeah, absolutely. First, I want to take us on a little journey of the data. Let's use your GPU and gaming as an example, right? What happens during all this process in, let's call it, the previous day's world before direct storage was available? Well, essentially, you have your storage device. You go to read some data from your memory. Then your CPU needs to do some decompression of the data, and then it gets delivered to your GPU via the memory on your GPU. As you can see, that's quite a bit of cycles there, which takes some time. Removing steps definitely helps with improving performance and reducing latency. So what direct storage does is essentially removes that CPU decompression layer and allows the SSD itself to just pull the data directly from memory. and that savings helps improve performance. And obviously, the faster the storage device, for example, a Gen 5 SSD, the more data and the more rapidly you can pull that data, deliver that data to your GPU's memory. So it's a really exciting opportunity. Finally, SSDs are at just insane speed levels, really. And with the advent of Gen 5, that performance really, really helps and really can give an edge to applications to be able to really show real world results. And we're still in the infancy of direct storage and what's possible. More and more applications are coming. More and more is being developed. I think I read recently Unreal was adding this right into their engine, so developers can take advantage of direct storage right from the get-go. So all sorts of possibilities are coming with direct storage and with the introduction of Gen 5 SSDs.
Yeah, to kind of touch this here, there's a really great actually doc that I'll show you guys here, and I'll link in the chat if you guys are interested in kind of taking a look at it from GDC, from AMD. But NVIDIA has similarly put out information on this as well as Intel, because of course this is an open standard in terms of pretty much everybody's working on it in concert to be able to take advantage of this technology. But kind of just giving you some perspective in terms of kind of the amount of work that has to kind of go through traditionally in terms of what kind of gets layered through. You can actually see in this traditional model, there's quite a bit of kind of hops and steps that have to kind of go through. And you can see in kind of this bypass model, it's much, much quicker in terms of being able to go to that application, which for us, for many in situations, is going to be really the game, right? You can see how much quicker that path is going to be. And what Matt was also noting here, actually, when it comes down to the compression, right? A large part of this is how we're also looking at how we're interfacing with system memory and the storage and the GPU. And when you take a look at the available bandwidth, it's a 4-2S by high-speed DDR4, and now definitely by high-speed DDR5 memory. And with PCI Express Gen 4 and now moving into PCI Express Gen 5, both standards do support direct storage, but the best experience unquestionably will come from Gen 5 based M.2 based SSDs. We can really start to see why it makes sense that you want to be moving this over to experience optimally kind of this configuration between the GPU and between that DRAM solution, right? So it's a very exciting step. It's a very exciting implementation. I think in a moment here, I'm going to probably actually set up my little quick demo. I'm going to connect my power supply. I've got a cool little bench here that I can show you here. I don't have a 4090. I wanted to put together something that seemed kind of somewhat balanced, because actually was pretty surprised, to be honest. I actually thought first when these drives were going to come to the market, I thought they were going to be quite a bit more expensive. You guys haven't touched on it, but I think we should let people know what the pricing is on these drives, because historically in the past, high-speed PCI Express M.2 based SSDs actually were quite a bit more expensive. This is actually for the performance envelope that you're getting. I think it's actually pretty reasonable in terms of the cost, where kind of what I put together here is I've got an AMD platform with our Prime series based motherboard. So that's kind of in our mid-range series, still an enthusiast based chipset, right? I've got it with your Pro memory. We then got that T700, and then I'm going to be putting here a 4070, which I think is a pretty good balance in terms of kind of not going super crazy in terms of like the highest end graphics card, but a good balance that this would be a very solid gaming system, really be able to offer me performant experience at 1440p, high refresh rate, and even into 4K gaming, right? But we're going to jump into a cool little, as they call it, the avocado benchmark, right? And we can kind of get a little bit of a sense of how this compares. And I think I also have on here for comparison, we've got one of your guys' PCI Express Gen 4 based M.2 SSDs. So we can see a little bit of kind of compare and contrast here. And if you guys are really interested, you guys could actually run it on your own system and then maybe give yourself that perspective like, hey, I really want to make that upgrade, right? But keep in mind, of course, that it is a kind of a balance of all of the factors on your system, right? You're utilizing the sub storage, the DRAM's a factor as well, and the GPU is a factor as well, right? So all those things kind of come together there. So let me go ahead and get this primed here. And actually, let me go ahead and actually show you guys quickly this drive actually in effect. So I'll get you a little bit of a closer shot here. So give me 1 second here to show this beautiful drive in all its visual glory here. So we got our test bed here. I'm going to get this set up here. And there we go. And I think in a little bit here, we'll talk about some of the outpoints. So let me 1 second here to switch over. All right, so you guys can see it there. I've got my nice Prime Series board. We've got our very, very nice T700 right here. So you can actually see it's deceptive in terms of when you take a look at the drive, right? Go ahead and focus that in a little bit. There we go. You can actually see how tall that heatsink is, right? All that fin density right there. It looks really, really nice, really clean. And this is actually a dual contact based design. So there's actually heat dissipation that's occurring not only at the top, but also on the rear. And that's important because higher density based drives, you actually have components that are both on the top side and on the bottom. If you look at maybe older drives, so take for instance something like here, this is an older Crucial drive, you're going to find that there's effectively nothing that was on the back, so you didn't have to worry about having to have dual contact. With a lot of our newer motherboards, we started implementing actually what we call a dual contact design, which means we actually had like a thermal pad on the back of the motherboard to help to aid in thermal dissipation. But I'm going to go ahead and slot this in. Of course, it's one of our new boards, so it's got, of course, a really nice Q-latch design, so it means it literally just locks in. There's no screws to lose or nothing like that, so it really makes the installation process very seamless. We've got, of course, also this really, really nice Pro memory. So this is the Pro memory. You can see that really nice, just clean, nice black design, that nice black heatsink. I'm a huge fan of it. It pairs perfectly with this Prime Series board. So that's going to be our little baseline system. So let me go ahead and move this over here to our setup. All right.
Yeah, JJ, we made a lot of design decisions on that T700 to really ensure we could deal with the thermals that Gen 5 was bringing to the table with all this performance, right? Like
Yeah,
you mentioned.
I mean, while I go ahead and get this set this up, maybe that's actually a good point to kind of speak to. Can you guys talk a little bit about maybe the thermals and some of the kind of the factors of what users want to keep in mind? Because the reality is that with this type of drive and the performance that it's offering, right? If you go with, of course, the heatsink based drive, right, you can feel confident that you're helping to maintain its performance. There is still some considerations, I think, resident to airflow that users are going to want to keep in mind that actively to ensure its best performance, especially if you're benchmarking the drive, right? Airflow is going to be your friend, right? Probably generalized usage, the heatsink is going to be sufficient and not kind of restricting performance, right? Because you're not saturating the drive, you're not heavily hammering it, right? So you don't need to worry about it. When it comes to the non-heatsink based offering, right, which I'll show you guys here in a moment, and we already showed the image there, it changes up a little bit because it very much comes down to then the motherboard, right, and what's the heatsink solution and kind of how that plays out. But let's talk a little bit more about kind of thermals here. Let me bring up that banner right here.
Yeah, absolutely. So just starting with the design itself, right? I think you kind of highlighted it, JJ. We did decide to go with a double-sided PCB design, which allows us to put components, as you again highlighted, on both sides of that M.2 form factor. That allows us to spread out the heat and avoid what I like to call the thermal volcano, where everything is all on one side and just generating heat out of one spot. So double-sided PCB is one element. The other element here, as you highlighted, is the heatsink design itself, right? And it's actually a two-piece design with two different types of solutions. The top piece is all aluminum, and then the bottom, that U-shaped piece, is actually a nickel-plated copper. So it's even more designed to help with taking that heat and pulling it away from all those really hot components. And then lastly, there's an additional thermal material, that's placed between the heatsink and the drive itself to further draw that heat away from all those hot components and into the heatsink and spread it out into your system. And as you highlighted, right, Gen 5, definitely you need to be aware of the thermals, but I wouldn't be scared of the thermals. The drive is designed to also protect itself, right? Number one thing for us is we want to make sure that your data is always safe at all times. So the firmware is designed to have mechanisms to protect the thermals and ensure that nothing goes wrong and none of your data is lost, as that's the most important. But also airflow is also important, right? The design itself is there to help channel that airflow from your whatever case of choice you're using for your gaming or other professional system, and draw that airflow across that heat sink and pull that heat away. So a lot of various options that we used to help us with the thermals. And really, our design philosophy is we started this conversation about hard drives and spinning metal. I know Harshit likes this one. We didn't want to put spinning things again, so we really didn't want fans. So we really took that into account, and we wanted to maintain that essence of a solid state drive and have just a nice, silent, elegant solution.
Absolutely. And just to add one more point, so Matt touched upon the thermals. The other key pillar, which we made sure we when we were designing this product was aesthetic. So we wanted to make sure, the fins looks aesthetically clean, and so that end of the day, if I'm installing on my motherboard like JJ, how you are right now, it looks clean, it looks sleek. So we wanted to make sure we take those two pillars in check, thermals and that looks, when we were designing this heatsink.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at the, I don't know if we can put the image back up, but if you look at the design itself, it's kind of like a tapered or tiered solution. One of the thought processes was there is sometimes those slots are really close to GPUs. We don't want any interference there. So we wanted to make sure we were very sleek, very elegant, but also providing that great thermal dissipation. So a lot of consideration. It looks very simple, but there was some thought into it.
Yeah, no, I was definitely impressed when I was testing it. I found it worked really well. It was really complementary to also take just very, very minimal airflow from within the chassis setup. When I went ahead and put the system into a chassis, it was really easy for it to just go ahead and see how it maximized with just a little bit of minimal airflow. And I'm talking about, guys, normally in most systems, when I'm usually having a system, I have my fan curve set from as little as about 400 up to about maybe 1600 RPM for, let's say, my chassis fans. And so normally when I'm usually gaming or maybe just kind of doing things generally in my desktop environment, my fan's probably going to be somewhere between about 8 to 1200 RPM. That very minimal amount of fan RPM is going to be more than enough to kind of create ambient airflow across that heatsink array to keep it, like I said, nice and stable. Again, you'll see the highest temperatures when you start to go in and you like run something like Atto, Crystal Disk, Benchmark, any type of essentially stress test. And it is important to keep in mind that thermally that will be presented to you when you're actually doing your benchmarking. So if, let's say, the drive is kind of starting to get to that higher side, right, you can see a little bit lower level of performance, right? Now, keep in mind, it's still going to be, I'd say, well upwards of what you would have with a PCI Express Gen 4 drive, but ultimately airflow is going to be your friend, right? And of course, on, like I said, larger drives, when we take a look at something maybe like, excuse me, here, this is our, no, the board I'm about to show off, that one is that's an AMD board. But here, if I take a look at something like our Z790 board, this one already comes with a really, really high performance, large, this entire portion right here is an entire heat sink. And then it actually has a heat pipe. So there's a secondary, essentially, element there for thermal dissipation. And then on some of the other boards, it gets even larger, where this right here is an entire bar, just an entire heat sink that we offer. That actually comes included with this model. And on the Hero board, the thickness, if when I pull out the Hero board, I'll bring it out in a little bit, but the Hero board has a heat sink that's probably about 3 times the density of the heat sink that you guys have on your drive, which is already, it's already great. The main reason why some people go, well, why would you overbuild it? Our perspective is also from that thermal environment consideration. So maybe some chassis, they might have very, very, very limited thermals, right? And so we almost kind of go, the thing will work passively, right? 100%, even if there was an additional airflow, it would be able to ensure its essentially performance.
Absolutely.
So I think I've got my system set up here. Let me go quickly check here if it's actually outputting. Oh, there we go. So it's in the desktop. So you see right here. Okay, yep, I've got my mouse right here, and got this little utility right here, so we can go ahead and go over here, and this is our direct storage benchmark. It has been updated, I believe, with the newer 1.2 base release that recently came out. So we're going to head over to our demo here, and we're going to take a look here. And what we're going to be wanting to take a look right here is over in the bandwidth, which you can already see is quite high, almost essentially 23 gigabytes worth of data. So really, really quite performant in terms of actually what you would experience. Now, depending on actually the drive that you're running, so if you're running, of course, a lower spec drive, this is going to proportionally start to come down. It's also, like I said, influenced by the rest of your system and by the GPU that you're running. But I believe I have already a very fast drive. Now, again, direct storage can be realized on a PCI Express Gen 4. So this might not be as dramatic if maybe you're running an earlier PCI Express Gen 4 or maybe a late PCI Express Gen 3 based drive. You would see quite a bit of a lower value, where you could be maybe between like 6 to 12 gigabytes or something in that range. But for reference, just to show a little bit of a delta, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to bring up my secondary drive here. So I believe I've got...
and JJ, if I may,
Yep.
just one comment on that what I call the avocados demo.
Yes.
I think what's also really cool about that is not only that bandwidth, but if you saw that CPU utilization was very low. That's what's really impressive about the direct storage technology itself, obviously along with all the performance. Now you can use your GPU to do that decompression, and you can feed all of that really fast memory on your GPU and your system via your SSD directly. And now you free up your CPU to do all sorts of other things, right? So like if you're a streamer or content creator, now your CPU can be freed to stream to whatever favorite service of choice, right? Or you can do
or essentially just giving you more performance,
exactly.
right? Keep in mind, right? We are going into now where we've got monitors that are 280 hertz, 360 hertz, 540 hertz, right? When you're talking about driving very, very high, ultra high refresh rates, we still find many game engines that are lightly threaded and they need as much CPU frequency essentially as they can get. So a lot of people don't realize this, but when you start to saturate the IO bus, so even like heavily using USB, heavily using PCI Express, your CPU utilization goes up quite a bit. Most people don't know that because they're not looking at their task manager and seeing it go from being like it was idling at a few percent to all of a sudden going like, wow, it's using 20%, right? But this does happen. Some of the other really cool stuff that also occurs within direct storage is not just this rebalancing of the utilization, but also much more effective parallelism and queuing that occurs, where a lot of times in the past, people were talking about storage and it was always, well, how good is the performance at a queue depth of 1, because that's what was commonly looked at. But the exciting thing here is that direct storage wants you to use queue depth, right? You really want to be having stuff stacked in and then fed in really efficiently. And that's where we start to see, hey, the performance values that we're seeing at queue depths of 32, of 64, you can actually start to really see kind of the full potential of what's kind of going on here. But let's go ahead and go over to, I believe, my second drive here. So this should be, should have the same setup here. And you'll see this one's running a little bit lower. Again, it's not going to be as dramatic as, like I said, if I had a higher, of course, higher end GPU configuration where you could see more. Because, of course, with the highest end GPU configurations, you can see, upwards of 30 gigabytes, which is just insane to see that level of performance, right? That's going to be possible, right? And again, this is already probably one of the fastest Gen 4 drives. So, you're taking a look at kind of that parity to parity kind of solution, right? But of course, when we take a look at some of the other examples, when we talked about performance, another really cool one that I actually want to show off here is going to be Asia. Now, we kind of gave something a little bit in direct storage, and here we kind of move a little bit in mind, but I still think it also relate to thermals, and we'll talk about this in a moment here. But one of the cool demos that I wanted to show here that actually really shows the benefit of kind of the performance. If you guys are not familiar with ASUS system tests, is this test actually allows kind of creative professionals that are working, especially in videography and cinematography, to essentially pick different resolutions and test file sizes and run this through and actually see how much throughput or essentially how many frames a second they are targeting. Because, of course, ideally, depending on their workflow, they don't want to be below 30 frames a second, or they might not want to be below 60 frames a second, right? And here you can really start to see the benefit of so much more bandwidth that is available to you on a PCI Express Gen 5. So here we've got volume D, and on our other drive, we're going to go ahead and switch that over to volume C. I've gone ahead and gone with something a little bit higher. We could drop it down to something 4K, but similarly, we're talking that actually 4K is pretty passe at this point. There's a lot of variability in terms of 4K, whether you're talking about uncompressed workflows, is it 10-bit, is it 12-bit, right? There's a lot of variables, a lot of permutations, so you can play around with this in a lot of different ways. But let's go ahead and take a look at some of our values here. So, okay, we've got our PCI Express Gen 4, all right, and we'll switch it over here so we can kind of go back. We can go back and forth. So you see 70, 78, right, and we can go back to megabytes. All right, let's go ahead and now take a look at our PCI Express Gen 5. And we can just see, I mean, it's a massive increase, right? So you can see this is just a huge performance bump, right? Where again, look at that frame rate differential, right? That's a massive frame rate differential, and it shows you just what's on tap there, right? And this is a pretty high-end configuration. I'd say actually this is pretty close to a lot of professional workflows where we're looking at a 5K RED-based sensor, right? And then we moved up the test file size. We didn't even use a 1 gig. We used to a 16 gig file size, which I think is going to be more representative of kind of a modern workflow for this type of professional target. And we also went to 12-bit in terms of the actual codec type. And you can see just a huge performance difference. And this is where I really start to see that you're going to benefit from that improved bandwidth. And like what we talked about earlier, right, some of these things are going to continue to improve as well. And the permutations on the configurations also play a part too, right? Where you could imagine that on this platform, like an X670, you have the ability, you can have multiple PCI Express Gen 5 drives too, right? So if you all of a sudden want to have one drive that you're copying from and another drive that you're working from, you're now even further increasing that performance because in other situations, you're going to be bottlenecked by the other drive, right? You're going to be bottlenecked by your Gen 4 drive, right? So platforms giving you more PCI Express lanes is really exciting, right? So this gives you essentially just kind of an indicator here of the really impressive performance that you have available to you there.
Absolutely.
So,
go ahead, Matt.
Oh no, I was just going to say, not that I was looking to build a new system with an ASUS motherboard recently, but I think you guys also offer that add-in card that allows you to attach a couple of SSDs together, even Gen 5, I believe, as well. So yeah, I can just imagine the possibilities in terms of performance there. That's got to be crazy.
Yeah, so depending on the model you have, and I'll talk about this a little bit later in our board pairing recommendations, but we'll have select models. Different boards have a different kind of number of counts. So AMD right now, what I'd say has the most robust PCI Express Gen 5 support, and that's just because they have dual chipsets that are affording them more lanes. With Intel-based platforms, pretty much what you're looking at is one drive. So that's great because I think for the vast majority of us, we can get that 1 or that 2 or that 4 terabyte drive. Great for your primary OS, your primary games, and your applications is going to be really solid. I think for probably some more creative professionals or users that are going to have more demanding workflows, AMD is going to be the platform that you might want to look at because you're going to have boards that can have actually up to 4 PCI Express Gen 5 M.2 SSDs, which is pretty crazy. And we have different models that might have something like this that'll have an actually add-in card. We also have Intel boards that have this as well, that maybe if you're water cooling your board, you might actually not have a native PCI Express Gen 5 slot on the motherboard, but you have a Gen 5 add-in card. And you can put the actual T700 non-heatsink, put it in here, because this whole thing, literally the whole thing, is this one big heatsink. You slot that into a slot and you'll be good to go. So we have a number of kind of different solutions for you. But let's go ahead and just, before we keep kind of moving on to some of these other points, I've got some other cool little information here that I want to show, some stuff in the utility and some other points. Let's just take a moment here and take a look and see if we've got any other kind of questions that have been coming up from the community side here. So let's go ahead and see here what we've got going on. We got everybody definitely sharing that level up with Crucial. Fantastic. You guys want to keep doing that. That enters you in so that when we do the drawing for that 4 TB T700, hopefully you're going to get in on the opportunity to win one of those drives, as well as there'll be a secondary, very, very cool SSD that we're going to be announcing here in a little bit on this stream as well. So pretty cool addition to that. Let's see, somebody. Oh, hey, DePoets is joining us. DePoets, a great actually creator. I have a few motherboards with PCI Express Gen 5, but all of them only have a single Gen 5 slot. So I've been rating a bunch of Gen 4 Gen 4 to hit Gen 5 speeds. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, of course, one option, but of course, there's always the reality that when you RAID, right, it's a little bit different than the controller natively, of course, having that essentially that parallelism built into it, right? And of course, also the NAND is going to be different between these solutions and those solutions as well. And it's ultimately just going to be a more streamlined, consistent experience, right? The other thing too that also I'm not against necessarily RAID, but I tell some users you have to be mindful of is that depending on certain like firmware updates that can break the option ROM that can occur for your RAID controller. So having essentially a single drive is essentially just a more seamless experience for a lot of users, right? But definitely true, you can get that. Now, one interesting thing, and I don't know, have you guys actually tested out this? And I thought maybe we could try this out, is I did load it up. Have you guys actually, with DDR5, seeing as we got this new fancy DDR5 Pro memory kit, you could get crazy and you could do a RAM cache, and you could use your high-speed DDR5 memory and supplement that with your PCI Express Gen 5 and see, could you maybe break, 20 gigs a second? It might be possible. I think we might have to try that out. I always like trying that out when there's new memory and there's new kind of SSDs to kind of play around with. It's one of those cool things, especially with DDR5. One of the big benefits of DDR5 is higher density, right? We used to live in an era where it was commonly you were seeing like 8, 12, maybe 16 gigs. Now, a lot of people, they got 32, they got 64 gigs. But you might not really be using all that memory. So why not maybe take, 16 gigs and have that be a cache that supplements your actual SSD directly and see, can you even get maybe some more performance? I think that might be something to try out. But let's see here.
Yeah, and I think you said it right there, JJ, right? Is finally the SSDs, the speeds are coming up there, right? I mean, the DDR4, DDR5 is, DRAM's the king when it comes to latency there and performance, but we're finally seeing, really fast speeds from the actual storage itself. So lots of opportunity.
You've got a user right here that's actually already running a T700 2TB on their Maximus Z690 Extreme as they type this. Fantastic.
That's awesome.
Thanks so much for Team ROG and for rocking that T700. Fantastic. And that is correct that actually both Extreme models, so the actual Extreme board, I've got it, I think, over here in my magic bag of holding. As it is. That's the Extreme right there. It is actually no longer production. We just actually stopped production on the Extreme. But if you do have an Extreme board, whether it's Z690 or Z790, it does support. And that huge thing right there, and that huge heatsink, that will get you taken care of in terms of your T700.
Yeah. And JJ, one important thing, in order to complement the heat sinks that ASUS has, we have the other type of SKU, which is the non-heat sink, So given that flexibility we are providing to an end customer to, if you have an integrated heat sink option, do explore the non-heat sink T700 so that you can buy the world's fastest retail SSD right now and take use of those cool looking, motherboard heat sinks as well.
So let me go ahead and quickly show that right here before I go over to the next item right here. And again, you guys can kind of see the two models right here. So essentially you have the non-heat sink and you have the heat sink. And I think the best way to kind of think about it is ultimately probably just seeing where you are at with your motherboard in terms of your configuration, right? So if you've got a very performant oriented motherboard that has a very robust heatsink solution, I'd say just save the money and get your essentially the non-heatsink based version. The performance is going to be the same and you don't have to worry about that. Also, at least per my understanding, and if you guys can confirm, I believe the way that you kind of have designed this to have an optimal bond and kind of contact on the heatsink version, it's not a model that you would want to essentially like disassemble or attempt to kind of remove, right? To try to kind of make it work within that. And this is also important that when you're taking a look at some of the motherboards, when we talked about kind of boards that might have like a dual contact design, so that means that they have like a thermal pad underneath, right, helping to serve as a secondary heatsink, right, with a metal plate. And then the top layer, you wouldn't want to use the heatsink model, because even if you took off the top heatsink, it might not actually physically work in terms of that Z height, because there's a little bit of a different Z height. So again, you really do want to try to make sure that you're pairing the right model for the board that you have to make sure that you have the most seamless experience. But I think for a lot of our enthusiast users, go with the non-heatsink version. If you have maybe a little bit more of an entry board that might have just a more basic heatsink. So as an example, let me see if I have one here. And I can show this on the secondary cam, but so this prime board, I can tell you from the kind of the testing. So this prime board right here, let me go ahead and pull back on this image. The prime board, it's a much more basic just heatsink. Now this heatsink does work. Roughly, it's a pretty similar mass, but it's about equivalent. And I'd actually probably say that your guys is actually maybe edges it out a little bit more, because that is a little bit more Z height. It can allow for a little bit more cross airflow, right? So in that situation, you could kind of go back and forth, right? And you could say, maybe I go with the heatsink version and I'll put that one on there, right? But if I was going on something like the Hero motherboard or the Extreme or some of those higher end boards that have more elaborate heatsink designs, then I'd go with the non-heatsink. But can you, again, recap for me on, confirm on the disassembly, right? No disassembly, right? On the heatsink version, right?
Yeah. We definitely do not recommend you to take apart the heatsink device. I mean, it can be done, but we definitely do not recommend it. That is why we offer both the options, both the heatsink and non-heatsink SKUs, as Harshit and both JJ mentioned. And one thing on the non-heatsink specifically, I mean, first of all, for both, definitely make sure you have proper heat dissipation, whether you use our heatsink or the one that ASUS provides for you. That's a must. We always say do not use these without any sort of airflow, and do not use these without any sort of heatsink, just period. Make sure you do have some sort of adequate cooling method for your device. And actually on the non-heatsink, if you saw that the label on that image prior, it's actually a silver copper clad label. And the reason I bring this up is because if you're going to install that non-heatsink drive into your motherboard that has either thermal pads and a heatsink, you actually don't need to peel that label off. You can leave it on. That label is designed to help pass the heat through to whatever other heat dissipation device you're using. So very clean, very easy for customers to just buy the drive, plug it in, slap on whatever heat sinks or cooling you want, and call it a day.
Fantastic. And I think I'll also go ahead and this, I think, is a good opportunity to plug your guys' Crucial storage utility. If you guys not aware, one of the things that actually I think has always been a great thing for Crucial, and you guys have had for a long time, and it does separate some companies from others, right? And this also is, I speak to your guys' tight vertical integration and validation, is actually having a utility that allows for actually accurate monitoring of your smart values, temperatures, checking for your firmware, all of those data points, right, in one clean, consistent UI, right, that you have available to you. And of course, if you guys scale out and you have multiple drives, so you got, you know, a P3, you've got a P5, you've got a T700, they'll all be registered inside the utility, so you don't have to kind of have multiple things that you kind of open it up. So I decided, if anybody was paying attention there, I did go ahead and bust out the RAM cache, and I allocated a little small percentage. So does anybody want to guess what numbers we might get if we decide to run it? Does anybody want to field the guess?
Oh man, I'm excited myself. I won't lie.
All right, let's go. Let's go ahead. Let's give the community an opportunity here and see what they think. What's going to be the percentage here of that? And let me also go ahead and I'll bring up the product page here as well for everybody, so we can go ahead and confirm on that. But can you guys, while I go ahead and bring that information up, can you confirm on the MSRP pricing that we have for the drugs?
Yeah, sure. So definitely pricing keeps changing, but you know, you're buying the world's fastest retail SSD, which is about 70% faster than any top tier Gen 4 SSDs that you can think of right now. So overall, you know, it depends on the capacity that you're buying. So 1 terabyte heatsink, you can see it's around 209. 2 terabyte is around 339. Somewhere around there, and 4 terabyte is around $600. The non-heatsink and the heatsink is around $639. Definitely, we offer, you know, this SKU across various other e-tailers as well. So, hop on to get the best price. And, we have the 6 type of SKUs that will be, that we are selling right now. At the end of the day, keep in mind you're buying the world's fastest retail SSD. So if you're a gamer, as JJ touched on the direct storage, in future with direct storage as it evolves, you would need a faster SSD to keep up with your competition. And then content creators, for whom time is money. So
of course, this is it's just like any type of component when we talk about, let's say, like a premium monitor, where sure, we've got 1440p monitors that start literally at a little over $200, and we have our flagship 1440p monitor that's about $1,100. Now that's a very big price difference, but you're paying also for outstanding color accuracy, the fastest response time, right? You're getting the best motion clarity in the industry, right? So again, this is kind of combining that experience, right? If you're really looking for the absolute best when it comes to performance, then of course it is going to cost you a little bit more. But you guys also have a really great product stack, and you guys are really competitive across that product stack, right? So you got P5, you got P3, right? You can pick the drive that works best for you on budget. And again, nothing wrong with even a P3, right? The reality is it's still a very capable drive, right? So let's go ahead and click that button. I want to see what we're going to get. So for reference, again, guys, we are running the DDR5 Pro memory in there. So if we go ahead and pull up our task manager, we can also see that it is running the nominal JDEC value right here. Sorry, actually wrong drive right there, but that's fine. We'll do a little bit of comparison. So that's on the D drive. It's not on our C drive. So that's already that's not slow, right? That's a Gen 4 based drive. So it's only here that we're looking at, almost 6 gigs, right? And you're kind of going, oh, not as fast as I would have hoped, right? But that's the nature of things, right? When you've got something new and exciting. So we can see right here, though, that the RAM cache has gone ahead and allocated a portion of memory, and we've gone ahead and reserved that portion of memory there for that drive. So we're going to get ready to go ahead and take a look at that. But as I noted right here, we are running the AMD Poor Table specification, and that's the really great thing about this DDR5 Pro memory, is it is a true plug and play. Unlike other memory that you get on the market, that you're going to have to go in and actually turn on an Expo profile or enable DOCP to engage XMP and then map that out. You don't have to do any of that. Literally, you just put it in the board and it will automatically post and boot at 5200 C42, a nominal actually 1.1 voltage, again, because it's not an overclock. There's no actually additional voltage like other memory kits you're going to see that are commonly running like 1.35, maybe even 1.4 in terms of their voltage, right? So we're going to let this finish up here, and then I'm going to go ahead and run one more. So I'll go ahead and open that up. We're going to change it over to our C drive right there. And I don't know if anybody in the chat gave a guess as far as what we thought we were going to get right here. So we'll get ready to.
Hey, JJ, I do see someone. Is it possible to make the screen bigger? Was the ask.
I can probably do a magnifier. It's already right now at 1080p, okay. So it's already a little bit large. But let me see if I can do the magnifier.
Well, I think you're on the 3 scenes of us.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Yeah. There we go. That might be helpful. Or this works too.
We got it magnified there, so hopefully that's a little bit bigger. So, all right, guys. So let's go ahead and see what our values are here. Survey says. What are we gonna get? What are we gonna get?
Wow.
There you
go. Holy smokes. That is crazy.
That's the benefit, of course, of DDR5. DDR5, of course, has massive amounts of bandwidth. So it's pretty crazy, right? So pretty cool. And there's a lot of options that you can play around with RAM cache software. Again, this is not what you have to do. But I'm just giving you guys a little bit something you could maybe play around with, right? Is that you can try out different utilities. For some of you guys that actually do even have ROG motherboards, we do have select boards that even did ship with RAM cache and RAM disk software. So you can go ahead and try this out. But I thought, a little bit fun there. Just go ahead and try something a little bit different out. But let's go ahead and get ready to kind of just finish wrapping up some of those points right here. Oh, actually, sorry, that's the utility. I was going to show the utility. So give me 1 second to drop out of the magnifier there. Oh, okay. And all you guys need to do is pretty much download the utility. And one of the other cool things too is I normally do recommend always doing a clean installation when you get a new drive, just to get everything kind of as smooth and as respondent and as performant as possible. But I believe you guys do also offer Acronis, right? Software to allow for easy cloning, right? Where users can download that software. So if they want to image, maybe they've coming over from an older Gen 4 drive, they're going to come over to their Gen 5 drive, right? They can easily go ahead and just clone their drive, right? From one drive to the other, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Acronis is offered with all of our Crucial drives. So definitely they can, customers can utilize that Acronis with the T700.
Fantastic. And so you get guys here, here's the storage executive suite, right? Very clean, really easy in terms of giving you the information, immediately letting you know good health. You can check your smart value information right there. It immediately lets you know about the critical temperature, right? Your capacity, or whether you have the latest firmware version. If you then want to go in and kind of target in a little bit more, you can select your drive and you can check all your information, such as even checking like your PCI link speed, which is pretty cool if you just want to make sure it's actually working the right link speed, the corresponding temperature, all those kind of data points. We can see the temperature is a little bit higher right now because, of course, the drive has been, we just pushed it really heavy, right? It was going through that full benchmark, and it'll kind of come down. I believe the throttle temp for the drive is approximately about 81 degrees or something. Is that right?
Yeah, that is correct, JJ. Yeah, 81 is the first thermal throttling point for the device. Yep.
Yeah, and that's done for you guys just like it is on the CPU side to have you guys have safety, right? So essentially you don't have to worry about anything, just like a CPU. You don't want they essentially get to essentially a certain point. It's built-in logic, it's in place. So if for some reason something was happening, the drive will just throttle down to help to ensure its overall reliability and making sure, like you said, all your files are safe and you make sure that you still have a good experience until you can make sure that your thermals are in check and you're good to go, right? And I'm sure if you guys run into any issues, you can always feel free to, of course, reach out to Crucial's service and support team, and they'll be more than willing to help you out there. So before we get into the next part here, which is going to be a little bit on my side, kind of just talking about some of the motherboard combinations that users might want to keep in mind. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to touch on there on terms of the T700?
Just wanted to share the Pro Series lineup. So T700 is the first Pro Series lineup in terms of SSD that we have launched. So for users out there, if you want the best storage or best memory per se, we have launched Crucial Pro Series, where for anybody looking for the best memory and storage solution. And T700 is one of the first internal SSD, and as you can see on the screen, this is the DDR4 and DDR5 Pro series Pro products that we have launched in the Pro series. So,
and I believe you guys did note, right, that right now this is already rated up to 5600 MT. The great thing about this kit of memory here is that it's fully interoperable. This is rare, where it actually does have full official profile support for Intel and AMD. But again, a very big difference here, and as if we have a moment, if you guys really do want to see, I can actually show you here on this Z790 system, actually how the system works. If I was even to clear the CMOS, and I reload it, it'll automatically default work at the 5600 MT. This is quite different than almost every other memory kit that you normally would try on a system, where default, if you took a higher speed kit, it might have like an XMP profile. It would probably load in at a nominal 4800 MT. So that actually means it would be operating sub the actual official spec that the actual memory controller and the platform has been designed for. So the great thing about these kits is that they have been kind of designed to really offer a great, just true plug and play experience, right? If you're somebody that just wants exactly what Intel and AMD designed for, you want to have that confidence and reliability, interoperability, compatibility, and assurance. Because I can tell you, I deal with lots of users in the community who ask me, what memory should I try? I don't want to be in a position where it might not work. And we can tell you, hey, does overclocking support on the platform? Yes. Can you maybe get to those speeds? Yes. But there are also situations sometimes where users have to then maybe down bin their memory speed to get it to run because their memory controller couldn't do that. Great thing about these kits is you don't have to worry about any of that. You're just getting that assured performance right out of the box, and you didn't even have to tune anything. That's literally the really cool part, is that literally it's just plug and play for both Intel and AMD platforms with the same stick of memory. So even if you buy the 5600, you put it on AMD, AMD's max port table is 52, so it'll just auto post at 52. On Intel, it would be at 56. So I'm a very big fan of it. Great kitted memory, and they look really great. And as Sheet also noted, it does also come in a DDR4 version. So again, if you maybe are running maybe an older platform, right? So maybe you're running, excuse me, AM4, so maybe like X570, B550, or of course Z690 or a Z790, but our DDR4 version based motherboards. These are also great options. They're pretty much identical. The only difference right there is just a little difference on that PCB, right? One had that black PCB and one had the green PCB, right? But you still get the beautiful black heat sinks, though, right?
Absolutely. And we made sure, JJ, that the design profile and the language of both the products on the memory side and T700, complements itself. And even you see the glimpse of packaging, right? So we came up with the new Pro Series packaging, which has that nice premium metallic silver look both on the memory and storage side. So users out there, if you're looking out for the best Crucial offering, both on memory and storage, definitely, we recommend Pro Series product, which you can see over here, the T700 and memory.
Yeah, and I also give credit to very clean and very easy to read packaging, right? Gives you all the base information that would be really important to you. Immediately know that memory speed, the density, right? The model information, your warranty. So you have, here the XMP information, or if we go over to the, of course, higher speed kit, which would be on the 5600 side, right? You can, of course, see where you got both the Expo and the XMP 3.0 specification, right? So very clean, very nice. And again, great looking DIMMs. Really great choice for your builds there. Okay, let's go ahead and give me 1 second here. And let me bring up this little table here. So this is, I think, for some of you that might be wondering about chipset specification support. So like what chipsets and what motherboards are going to be supported. It's pretty straightforward. I think this was talked about in the very beginning, right? But pretty much any of the modern platforms, right? So AM5, pretty much AM5 across the board, it doesn't matter. It's pretty much every AM5 motherboard is going to do it. When we talk about X670E, X670, B650E, and B650, all of our boards will at least have one. So that means you guarantee at least one slot. It just goes on the higher end boards, you even get more slots. So I made a little bit of this breakdown chart for reference here. If we take a look at on the ROG side, you can take, for instance, on the ROG Strix, the Dash E will actually support up to 3 drives. The Dash F would be 2, the Dash A would be 2, and then the Dash I, which is of course mini ITX, would be 1 drive. Okay. Now, beyond that, if we take a look here on, sorry, give me a second. This is my Intel boards. Oh, wait, there's actually one missing. I had one over here, but for our AMD crosshair boards, so that's our actually higher end series. That one would be even higher, where the highest end crosshair extreme will actually support up to 4 drives. Here it is. Yeah, I actually have it. Give me 1 second here to load that one up. There we go. Okay. Yeah, that's it. Okay, perfect. So if we take a look at a kind of comparison, right, where we took a look at ROG Strix versus ROG on the extreme one will actually give you up to 4 drives. That's a lot of PCI Express Gen 5. There's 2 natively on the motherboard. Then you have 1 via the Gen Z adding card. And then there's also a secondary adding card. So you have up to 4. The Hero will give you 3. And then the Gene, which is actually our micro ATX board, will give you actually 2. So a lot of options when you look at just the ROG and the ROG Strix. When you move down to some of the other boards within the lineup, you're going to start to pretty much move down to a more kind of nominal kind of breakdown, which is going to be either pretty much 1 or 2. So if we take a look at the rest, so Tough Gaming, ProArt, and Prime Series, Tough Gaming is going to be 1, ProArt is going to be 2, and then Prime would be 1. Regardless of which Prime board. And I didn't break down for B650 because B650, all B650 motherboards have 1 except for the Dash E. The Dash E is our highest end B650E burst motherboard, and that one has 2 PCI Express M.2 Gen 5 compatible slots. But beyond that, from the most entry to the highest one, all of them will give you essentially 1 slot. And on the Intel side, Intel is going to be pretty straightforward. It's a smaller set of boards, but there are still boards that do have it. And that's going to be Here on Z790, it'll be the Extreme, which supports 1, the -E, which supports 1, the -I, which gives you 1. And then you can also see on Z690, same thing. The Extreme and the -E both give you 1 and 1. So very straightforward with those 5 boards on either Z790 and Z690. Now, there is going to be, I would say, a little bit of a kind of like a not like a standard configuration, but a possible configuration. Matt spoke to this a little bit. Technically, any motherboard that does feature PCI Express Gen 5 slots, so a physical PCI Express slot on the motherboard. So if it has a physical PCI Express slot on here, that can work as a bootable slot for an M.2 based SSD. So for some users, we do know this, like in some communities, like in CAD or architecture, take for instance, they might be fine. They really just focus on the CPU and on their memory and on their storage, and they might use like an iGPU because it's performant enough. So in that situation, they could actually use the slot, and then they could have something like a card like this, and they can slot it into one of those slots and then use that for PCI Express Gen 5 interoperability. And as also we talked about too, maybe you've got an older system, but maybe, you know, like in 2 years, you might upgrade. If you want to maybe make that initial investment right now, it is still fully backwards compatible. So these drives do still fully work with, if you've got a PCI Express Gen 4 enabled system or even older, again, as long as it supports PCI Express NVMe, which pretty much is going to go back to, you know, Z170, you could go back to X299, X99, all of those will work fine. It just will be bus limited. It's just not going to be able to get to the fastest speeds, but it still will be a very fast responded drive. It's just not going to give you the fastest speeds.
You'll get the fastest of that certain generation. Yes.
Yeah. And I didn't include them in there just because they're a little bit more niche, but for some of our professional creatives that are out there, we do also have our of course, our Xeon latest generation, the W790 based platform. So we have the W790 Ace and the W790 Sage. Those boards could go very crazy in terms of your M.2. The Ace would give you 5 PCI Express Gen 5 slots on natively on the motherboard, and the Sage has 7 PCI Express Gen 5 slots on the motherboard. So if you really wanted to go crazy in there, you could do that. But of course, those are designed for ultra high CPU core count, ultra high memory ultra high density memory configurations, and ultra dense storage configurations. So for those professionals out there, we do also have those. So let's get ready to kind of wrap it up here in terms of kind of look and see if we have any end questions that we have right here. See if we got anything that might have popped up in there. Jason's knowing, do you have a link for the memory? Yes, I believe I did drop a link in the chat, but I can go ahead and drop that link in there again. And if you guys are checking us out on YouTube or on Facebook, the links are in the description as well. But let me go ahead and drop the link for the T700, and I will also go ahead and drop the link for the DDR Pro series memory. And Matt or Harshit, if you either one of you see a question, feel free to go ahead and
Sure.
Yeah, let me scroll through, see see what I see through here. Yeah, we're very excited for the technology of Gen 5 and direct storage and the possibilities of developers and applications and just end users to take advantage of all that performance that's available nowadays with Gen 5. So it's a really exciting time, really a strong pivot in technology that's coming.
Manuel's knowing, what memory controller does it use? So memory controller is dependent on the CPU, right? So both platforms at this point support DDR5 memory, but Intel is the only one that supports dual memory standard. So with Intel, as long as the motherboard, right, because you can't have a hybrid motherboard that gives you both DDR4 and DDR5, but we do make motherboards that have DDR4, and they're noted with actually saying DDR4. And then if it doesn't list DDR4, then that means it's a DDR5 model. So if you get an Intel Raptor Lake or Alder Lake CPU, then you can support either DDR4 or DDR5 depending on your motherboard. If you get AM5 exclusively is DDR5. And both, as I noted, support PCI Express Gen 5. So Ben's noting, yeah, Ben's actually talking about something that I've talked a little bit about, and we actually talked quite a bit at length of this in actually our original stream with actually with Crucial as well. But let me see if I can bring this up here, and I guess we'll get ready to actually do our drawing here in a moment. So again, if anybody hasn't, make sure to get in on it with it's going to be that hashtag that people have been sharing. But let me go ahead and bring this up quickly here. So what somebody was asking about is how essentially memory density or population affects essentially scaling. And pretty much what this chart is showing you, this is the older chart. This is for Alder Lake, not for Raptor Lake. Raptor Lake, the values went up, but essentially the logic is the same. So as you increase essentially the slots per channel, the DIMMs per channel utilization. So the easiest way to think about that is if you go from 2 sticks of memory installed in your system to 4 sticks of memory, it becomes more stressful to the memory controller. And essentially that more taxing essentially implementation is going to limit the scaling that you have. You also have an effect of what's called memory rank. This is most commonly understood usually with aligning with density. So like if you get a 32 gigabyte kit of memory, that's going to be single rank. If you get 64 gigabyte, that's going to be dual rank. Dual rank memory is always going to be harder to scale than it is going to be single rank memory. And that's actually what you see right here. So the official table will actually show you that in a 1 SBC, 1 DPC, and single rank, and even a dual rank could run at 4800. But if you started to go to big configurations, maybe like running 128 gigabytes or something like that, you can actually see how the value goes down. And this is overclocking, right? This is what a lot of people sometimes don't understand is that they sometimes buy like a higher spec of memory and they're maybe running 4 DIMMs and they expect it to be able to run at the same level as a 2 DIMM configuration. And you have to count that it's actually no longer running at that in configuration. There's other factors as well, is that ideally you don't want to mix kits because the kits are binned and they're matched. I'm sure Crucial can speak to this as well. And we talked about this in our stream where ideally you want to buy a matched kit. You want to buy a kit that's actually binned and matched and profiled and tuned to that specific density, rank, frequency, timings, everything is all in alignment. Otherwise, it can work, but it's not necessarily validated to work. So hopefully that gives a little bit more feedback into that. And if anybody has more questions on that, we actually have another dedicated live stream that we talked about DDR5 overclocking, how you can actually have some tips and tricks, how you can test your memory scaling. And we actually have a really good post that we have in our PC DIY group that also talks about DDR5 insights. All right. So I think we're going to get ready to go ahead and do the first drawing. Unless do you guys have any other last things that you guys wanted to add in there?
So overall, really excited about the Crucial Pro series and T700. But if we have 2 minutes, I really want to share, the latest product that we launched yesterday, and this is the very first platform that we are sharing it on. So, do you mind me sharing really quick, JJ?
Yep.
Okay.
So I believe it should be this guy right here.
Absolutely right. So, presenting P5 Plus with heatsink. So we have been, shipping P5 Plus for a long time, and we are excited to share with you guys that we have launched P5 Plus with heatsink to cater all those console gamers who are out of storage by having so many games and now are ready to expand their PS5 storage. So, Crucial P5 Plus meets your needs. So we have launched this in 2 capacities, 1 and 2 terabyte, and it has really good sequential reads and writes. So reads is about 6,600 megabytes per second, and write is around 5,000 megabytes per second. So
and you'll also critically see, right, that the Z height and the heatsink design here has been perfectly designed to complement, right, this console installation, right? So again, a seamless experience for those users where they can have that confidence in knowing that they're getting an industry-leading manufacturer when it comes to their storage, right, and to their NAND, and that they can simply go ahead and install that and not have to have any interoperability and compatibility. I think it's a great addition you guys have there, along with, of course, things like your USB external offerings as well, which give you another way to kind of supplement storage, right? So I think this is a great addition. And for those that are watching the stream and tuned into all of this, the really cool part is we're giving one of these away as well. So in total, right, we've got that T700 4 terabyte, right, that we're going to be giving away. And we're going to be giving away this 2 terabyte, right, latest generation P5 Plus with heatsink. So 2 awesome drives. big thank you, everybody in the chat. Go ahead and give Crucial some love for supporting us here in this fantastic giveaway, and also for joining us here in this stream to be able to talk about all things PCI Express Gen 5 and this really new exciting technology with this brand new drive. So let me go ahead and bring up my storage, my draw poll right here, and we'll get ready to do our first draw. All right, so I'm going to give it 1 minute because based on my refresh right here, we've got 94 entries. So I think we can do a little bit better than that. See if we can break 100. Again, you want to use that hashtag level up with Crucial, right? Because definitely you're leveling up. We like to say build it better with ASUS is one of the ways that when you work with ASUS to pick your components, whether it's your motherboards, your graphics cards, your coolers, your power supplies, your monitors, your routers, whatever it might be, because we've got a really big product ecosystem, just like our friends over at Crucial. When you pair us together, you really can get a great performant, reliable experience to really help to give you a better experience, regardless of whether you're gaming, productivity, content creation, whatever it might be. We've got a product that will definitely complement your workflow and your use case. So you can definitely level up with Crucial and build it better with ASUS. So let's go ahead and see what we've got right here. We're going to get ready to go ahead and draw our first draw. All right, let's go ahead and let's do our first one. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Is it gonna be? Is it gonna be?
Oh, who is it? Oh,
there we go. Loki SMK. Loki SMK, who's definitely a gamer because he's got that Dota,
he's
right?
got Dota,
And
nice.
he's got the Dota there on YouTube is going to be our first winner. So because you're the first winner, I'm going to go ahead and give you essentially a dealer's choice. You can pick. Do you want that T700 or you want that P5 Plus? I think it was me. I'd probably go with that T700, but maybe you got a PS5 that's looking to finally get some extra love there in terms of the storage. Either which way, we're going to get you covered. So go ahead and make sure and email me at pcdiy@asus.com with your contact information so that we can go ahead and follow up with you. I'm going to go ahead and pop that on the screen there again. 1 second here. So that's going to be pcdiy@asus.com. Make sure and please provide your full contact name, your email, and your phone number. If I don't get your information, we are going to do nobody drop out, because I've had this happen before where sometimes people don't follow up, they don't contact. So we are going to go ahead and pull 2 alternates just as a precaution. Okay, so make sure if you're still watching, we are going to pull for 2 alternates. Okay, all right. So that's congrats, Loki SMK. Let's go ahead and go to our second winner.
Oh,
all right. Again on YouTube, Heart MK2. All right, fantastic. Showing some anime love there. All right, I like it. All right, so Heart MK2, you are going to go ahead and go with whatever Loki didn't want to go with, but either which way, 2 fantastic drives. I mean, I don't think you can go wrong. So there's nothing wrong on that side. Again, make sure to go ahead and email pcdiy@asus.com all your contact information. Okay, so those are our 2 winners. I'm now going to go ahead and, just as a precaution, do our 2 alternates just in case. All right. Alternate number 1 is going to be Juke. All right. I like that. A little bit more animation love. Okay. Alternate 1 and alternate 2. Manual. All right. Looks like YouTube was on a roll today. Sorry. Anybody watching on Facebook, I've had it in the past where sometimes we've had everybody from Facebook wins versus all the people from YouTube. It is random though. It is random. All right. Fantastic. That wraps up our giveaway. Thank you guys for joining us here on today's stream. If you guys are checking us out on demand and you have any other questions or comments or feedback, feel free to go ahead and join us in our ASUS PCDIY group. It's an amazing community, over 45,000 members, where we talk about all things PCDIY. You can also find out actually about some really cool posts that I've gone ahead and done regarding that DDR5 Pro memory, as well as that DDR4 Pro memory, where I talked about actually how it works, the streamlined experience actually at how it works when it comes to the post experience and how it actually loads your default tables. And I got ahead and detailed some other cool information there. And I'm also going to have some other cool performance data. I'm going to follow up with some cool benchmark stuff and some follow-up stuff on the RAM cache with, I think, the T700, which is going to be pretty interesting. And we'll also try out a couple of other permutations that will be dropping there in the group. So if you guys are interested, make sure to go ahead and check us out there. And of course, you guys can find out about all of these products by checking out Crucial's website. They've got those pages live right now for the DDR5 Pro, as well as for the T700. And again, you can get it in 1 terabyte, 2 terabytes, and 4 terabytes right now, as well as those DDR4 Pro and DDR5 Pro memory kits being available right now. So with that, Harshit and Matt, thank you so much for joining us. Anything you want to end out the stream with?
No, just really excited to be over here, JJ, and very excited for Crucial overall. You know, this is one of the first products, leadership products that we'll be launching, and you know, many more to come. So be on the lookout. And thank you for having us, Matt.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you, JJ, and everyone for attending and giving us the opportunity. We really appreciate it. We'd like to say Crucial is back in the game, so keep an eye on us. We have a lot of really cool, exciting products now and in the future. So thanks again.
Yeah,
really appreciate
and
it.
I think actually as a little bit of it, if we didn't note that, right? I believe you guys said that there's even some faster speed DDR Pro memory that's going to be coming down the pipe, right?
Absolutely right. Be on the lookout. I would say that, you know, for now. JJ, yes.
I like it. All right, guys. Thanks so much for joining us on today's stream. As always, best of luck with your builds. Take care, take it easy, and enjoy the rest of your day.